Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to continue to ask the question, what is Dungeons & Dragons, right? And I'm going to give you new evidence that Dungeons & Dragons is not a game. It's far more than that, and continues to be far more than that. And this discussion is getting old and tired, because the evidence is so strong and so voluminous and so obvious that Dungeons & Dragons is far more than a game, that it continues to bring to question the wisdom and intelligence of anyone who says Dungeons & Dragons is simply a game, right? Because there's just mounting evidence that it's more than that. So let's dive into this. So what is Dungeons & Dragons? So first of all, I'll tell you right now, John Peterson, David Ewalt, right? Ben Riggs, and I can't remember there's like, you know, Of Dice and Men, Empires of Imagination, Slaying the Dragon, Game Wizards. These are all academic historical records of Dungeons & Dragons. And I will tell you right now, in my opinion, every single one of those books is trash and has no purpose sitting on any bookshelf anywhere. And the reason why is you cannot study the history of a thing if you don't know what that thing is. And right now, no one knows what Dungeons & Dragons is, and this is demonstrated every single day, except me. I know what it is, and I'm desperately trying to drag the rest of the world and just make the rest of the world just look at what's in front of their eyes, right? So what is Dungeons & Dragons? Well, I'll answer this question. All right, first of all, we're still answering this question. And I guess even I do not fully understand, because I feel like there's still much to be unpacked, right? But I'm much farther down this journey. The correct study of Dungeons & Dragons is absolutely not historical. And I'll tell you right now, the historical study of Dungeons & Dragons, it really needs to be corrected, because those books are utter trash and do outrageous disrespect to Lorraine Williams, because nobody understands what Dungeons & Dragons is. And the historical study of Dungeons & Dragons continues, and the ontological study of Dungeons & Dragons, what is it? What is its base nature? Has not even been scratched. Okay? So here's the issue, right? And I'll tell you right now, I think that the work that David M. Ewalt has done, John Peterson has done, Ben Riggs has done, right, is repugnant, because there is a duty to do ontological research before you do historical research. And I really think that the history on Dungeons & Dragons is pure trash at this time, because it is people, you know, like being brought into a room where there's a curtain and there's a sharp, curved, long, spear-like object, and they're putting their hand on it and saying, this is a weapon. It's an elephant's tusk, right? You don't know what it is because you're not seeing the whole thing, right? And you're doing a history of an elephant's tusk, unaware that there's a living being behind it, you know, like, and so the history that's being done, and the worst victim of the history of Dungeons & Dragons so far has been Lorraine Williams, and she's been damaged so bad by it, right, that, you know, Ben Riggs openly discusses that he went and desperately tried to get her to talk to him, and she's like, I'm not talking to another one of you fools who are going to come along and ask me a bunch of questions that are outrageously prejudiced, right, and ignore all my answers, and then write whatever the heck you wanted to write to begin with, right, because you had a narrative about the history of Dungeons & Dragons before you ever put pen to paper. And she was 100% right. Like, it is galling what has been done to Lorraine Williams. She is the biggest victim of the academic historians of Dungeons & Dragons, and not a one of them have gotten it right yet. There hasn't been one single academic, historical, written document that does due diligence and actually treats Lorraine Williams with the respect she deserves. It's shockingly prejudiced. And I'll tell you right now, I don't think for 1 second that it isn't a coincidence that every single one of those books I just talked about was written by a middle-aged white male who, frankly, I think was clearly outraged that a woman led Dungeons & Dragons between 1986 and 1997 and built huge, massive value in it, and everything we enjoy today is there only because Lorraine Williams did her job and fixed every mistake Gary made. That's the truth of it, but nobody will write it, right? All right, so let's get all the way there. Okay. What is Dungeons & Dragons? Well, let's talk about it. Well, Dungeons & Dragons is it's a Magic the Gathering set called Adventures in Forgotten Realms. It's a Magic the Gathering set called Commander Legends, Baldur's Gate. It is Dragonlance Warriors of Krynn, a product that is sold as a board game to people who don't understand that it's a board game, right? What is it? It's the 1980 Saturday morning cartoon, which you can still buy, which was printed as a DVD, and you can buy the DVDs and watch the show, right? And what is it right now? Well, you know what D&D Dungeons & Dragons is right now? It's Harry Styles and Florence Pugh and Olivia Wilde and Jason Sudeikis and Harry Styles and Venice, right? Venice, Italy, all right? Like, that's what Dungeons & Dragons is, right? And here's why. Because here's the record. This is what happens. So Harry Styles walks over to Chris Pine and makes a gesture which the internet immediately begins discussing with thousands of tweets, probably well over 1 million tweets at this point, and different social media posts saying it really looks like Harry Styles spit on Chris Pine. Then many attempts are made to ask Chris Pine, did Harry Styles spit on you? He can shut the entire conversation down with one sentence. All he needs to do is say, everybody calm down. Harry Styles did not spit on me. I know for a fact that Chris Pine has not said that. You know how I know that? Because I've been waiting for it. Because Chris Pine is Dungeons and Dragons. He is Elgin the Bard. He is the banner carrier for Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, which has the possibility of single-handedly reviving Hollywood and becoming the first $3 billion film, right? In all the history of humanity, right? It is a burgeoning intellectual property, which may become the largest American movie blockbuster franchise in history, far surpassing anything Marvel ever did and anything Star Wars ever did. It's positioned for that, right? It's got real movie studio behind it, real money behind it, real stars behind it, and it is dropping at a perfectly timed position to catapult Hollywood into the future and make it much larger than it ever was and completely resurrected, right? All right, and that would be a drumbeat on top of the $1.8 billion that Tom Holland already did with Spider-Man No Way Home, right? So it might be the next drumbeat of momentum for Hollywood, right? And really fully saying, hey, the resurrection is complete. Hollywood's back, right? So, Chris Pine, right? And here's the thing. This is why this is important. Dungeons & Dragons is Harry Styles and is Chris Pine. And is this question, did Harry Styles spit on Chris Pine, right? Oh, and I forgot to give you one more little piece. So, here's the flow. Harry Styles appears to spit on Chris Pines. Chris Pines very directly does not deny that he was spit on, right? And then Harry Styles goes to New York and flat out says, I went to Venice to spit on Chris Pines. Those words came out of his mouth. Check the record. You will find it, right? So, even if he did not directly spit on every member of the D&D community by spitting on Chris Pine, by spitting on on Elgin the Bard, by spitting on Gary Gygax's legacy, by spitting on every Dungeons & Dragons book that's ever been printed, right? And saying, hey, I'm a big movie star, I'm a big, ex-boy band member. I could just spit on you, Dungeons & Dragons community. I don't care about you, and I could disrespect you. Even if he didn't spit on him, he said he did. He extends disrespect to you. He extends disrespect to me. He extends disrespect to every dungeon master. He extends disrespect to Gary Gygax and his family. He extends disrespect to all of the Dungeons & Dragons community. Every single day, this question is not answered, right? And actually, isn't it answered, right? Like, people were asking Harry. Harry said it. He said, I went to Venice to spit on Chris Pines. That seems really clear, right? Do we even need to hear from Chris Pine at this point, right? So the answer to the question, did Harry Styles, by proxy, spit on every member of the D&D community? The answer is yes, right? He's like, yeah, he's saying he did. Harry Styles is saying it, right? So this is where we landed, right? And so if you think for 1 second that Dungeons & Dragons is a game, you are not paying attention. Dungeons & Dragons is in the headlines. It is openly being discussed right now, right? So what is the product? Well, the product is chaos. The product is celebrity. The product is Olivia Wilde. The product is Florence Pugh. The product is Harry Styles. The product is Chris Pine. People don't just show up for the movie, they show up for the celebrity. And the celebrity extends to their personal lives, and it has for a century, right? And Hollywood is very calculated in making sure that their personal lives are part of the product. They've been doing it for decades. They've been doing it for over a century, right? And all of that is now directly connected to Dungeons & Dragons. And if you just open your eyes, it is ludicrous to say at this point that Dungeons & Dragons is a game. It is clearly a Hollywood element at this point, right? And Dungeons & Dragons is on the covers, Dungeons & Dragons business, literal business, is being discussed on the covers of Variety and many, many, many other major mainstream news sources. And so the idea that Dungeons & Dragons is anything but an amorphous catalyst that has far surpassed its original, even if it ever was a game, that the idea that now has not surpassed as a game and is not being talked about by people who don't even have anything that were not fans of Dungeons & Dragons even a year ago, right? Like here's a good example. Chris Pines has a fan club, right? It has thousands of members. Almost guaranteed those members did not care about Dungeons & Dragons one lick 12 months ago. They care now. Because they don't care about games. So why are they interested in Dungeons & Dragons now? Because Dungeons & Dragons has far surpassed its role, if it ever was, as a game. The idea that Dungeons & Dragons is a game is ludicrous. It is far more, and is mixed directly into the political, cultural, and religious elements of America, and it only increases with every single day. And the only other thing that increases is the foolishness of anyone out there trying to tell you that Dungeons & Dragons is a game. It has far surpassed that at this point. All that's my humble opinion. I'd love to hear your humble opinion. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.